my Quilty friends, in today's video I'm going to show you how to make half square triangles using the 8 at a time method. Now generally in my videos when we're doing our mystery block of the month we do them 2 at a time or 4 at a time. I don't think I've ever shown you how to make them 8 at a time. It's really quick and easy. Let me show you how. So first things first, we need to know what size we want our half square triangles to be, and I want mine to be 3 inches. So there's a really simple formula to work out what size you should cut your square at to get them to finish up at the 3 inches squared. So all we do is we take the size, which for me is 3 inches, we add 1 inch, making it 4, and then we times it by 2, which makes 8. 3 inches plus 1 times by 2 is 8. That's the formula. It's really easy. Now don't worry, I know you might be thinking, I'm not going to remember that. Well, I've got a free printable for you. All you need to do is click the link down below and you can get my free printable, which gives you instructions on how to make these half square triangles, including a chart giving all the different sizes that you might like to make. So we've got 2 8-inch squares here. What we're going to do is we're just going to take one, and on the wrong side we're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on both sides. So I'm just going to take my ruler, find that top corner. I like to find the top corner, line up my ruler, then find the bottom corner and make sure it's all nicely lined up, and then I will draw my line. And I'm just going to do that a couple of times so that it's really dark so that you can see it really well. Then I want to do the same on the other corner. So I'll just start at the top, line it up at the top, check it's lined up at the bottom, and when I'm happy I'll draw my line. I'm just doing a few, like I said, so you can see it really well. Okay, now what I'm going to do is take my second piece, they're both the same size, 8 inches, and I'm going to place them right sides together. I want to line up all the edges, and when I'm happy that everything's lined up, I'm just going to pop in a couple of pins just to keep it in place. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew along each side of the line with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So if I pop my pins in like this, they're not going to get in the way. Just checking it is all lined up nicely. Now let's sew. I'm going to sew along both sides of my line with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to take my foot, line it up with that line using my 1/4 inch foot here. I'm going to stitch it stitch length 2 because that's the stitch length I always use when I'm quilting, and I'm going to start at the very edge and sew right down to the bottom. I'm using wonderful confetti thread, which is my thread of choice. Coming off the very edge, cutting my thread, and now I'm just going to come along the other side. If you're enjoying this video, please do subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss out on another video. It really helps me out and I appreciate it so much. Now I'm going to do exactly the same on the other diagonal line that I drew. Off the very edge. Now we're just going to remove our pins, and it is optional, but if you'd like to you could give it a quick press now just so that it's sitting really nice and flat. So for once I've actually remembered to change my color thread, and I've used a nice bright pink so you can see what I've done with the stitches along both sides of our diagonal lines there. Now we're going to cut it. So what we need to do is we do need to cut along the lines we drew, but first we need to cut through the center of our squares. So what I'll do is I'll take my ruler and I'm going to line it up right on the cross section of where we drew that diagonal line. But I'm also going to make sure a line on my ruler is lined up with the edge of the fabric at the top and the bottom so that I know that it's really straight. And then when I'm happy that it is nice and straight, I'm going to cut it in half. Then I'm just going to really carefully lift up my ruler and turn. Now I've got a rotating mat. If you don't have one, just use a regular mat and turn it. Then I'm just going to place it down really carefully, making sure I don't move anything around. I'm going to line it up on that intersection again, lining up a line on my ruler with the edge of the fabric at the top and the bottom. And I can also see that a line on my ruler is lining up perfectly where I just cut. And then when I'm happy, I'll cut. Lifting up my ruler very carefully again. Now I'm just going to cut along the diagonal lines that I drew. Okay, and just like that, we should have 8 pieces. Oh, it didn't quite cut through on that bit there, so I'll just cut again. Don't panic if it doesn't cut all the way through. Just line up your ruler back on the best line that you can find and trim. So there we have our 8 pieces. Now we're going to press. So now, just like normal, we're going to set our stitches and then open it up and finger press, pressing the seams in whichever direction we need to, making sure there's no creases in there and pressing. And we'll repeat that for all 8 of our half square triangles, then we'll trim them up. So I've pressed all my half square triangles. Now I just need to trim them all up to my 3 inches squared. So the most time consuming thing is going to be screwing up your half square triangles, but the next time you've got a pattern that calls for a whole lot of half square triangles, you can refer back to this video and make them 8 at a time. Now don't forget, you can get my really handy free printable, which tells you exactly what size you need to cut your squares at, and a little quick reference sheet on how to make these half square triangles. I'll put a link down for that in the description below. Let me know in the comments what you think of this technique, if you already do it, or if you've got a better way of making half square triangles. I'd love to know. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.